Wow. Hi, and thank you all so much for coming. I can't tell you how excited I am. This has been a lifelong dream to be on a TED stage and to talk about something that is really important to me and close to my heart, this idea of creativity, because I think that everyone is creative, but in different ways, and so I'm really excited to share sort of my perspective on what creativity is and the elusivity of that, which I think is a really interesting theme that we don't think about all the time. How many of you guys in this room remember being asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? Let's see a show of hands. See, so it's quite interesting. We've got a really diverse group of people here from lots of different places with lots of different interests, and yet there's this question that sort of permeates our existence, our growing up, and our educational process. And I'm sure, as with me, this is a question that you've heard not just one time. It's not the first time that you enter school or the first time that you graduate or that you come into your first job. It's something that's kind of asked throughout your entire life. So the next question, how many of you felt the pressure to give a specific answer? Let's see, show of hands again. See, again, that's what I assumed, and I felt that same sort of pressure. How many of you now are either studying or practicing in that field? The answer to that question. Significantly less. And I think that's a really exciting thing to think about, because so many times along the path of your career, you're asked, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? What's the one thing that you're going to choose right now that you're going to follow for the rest of your life? And I think that's really challenging. And I also think it's really dangerous, because what it does is it makes you think so pigeonholed towards one goal that you kind of lose the opportunities to see what's around you. So imagine, instead of asking somebody when they're small or throughout their life, what do you want to be when you grow up, you asked something more like, what did you discover today? Or what are you passionate about? Or did you learn anything that changed your opinion? What did you learn today? What did you think about? What conversation did you have that shaped the way you think about the world? And it's just that small change in nomenclature that, instead of pushing someone towards a specific answer or the right answer, you're inspiring somebody to think about things from many different perspectives. So, a small anecdote. When I was 5 years old, I loved the Discovery Channel. And I watched all of the brain surgeries programs, and I said, I'm going to be a neurosurgeon. And it's funny, because it was never something that came as a pressure from my family. I don't think I have a doctor in the history of my entire family. But for some reason, I latched onto this idea of being a neurosurgeon. And so throughout my entire educational career, I said, that's what I'm going to be. And I had mapped out my entire life from when I moved into high school, when I went to university. I studied medicine. I did the whole pre-medicine track. And it was funny, because when I first took my first biology class, I actually hated it. But I still felt this pressure, this internal pressure that I said, you know, I'm going to be a neurosurgeon. This is my goal. This is what I need to achieve. And it was really scary to think that it actually might be the wrong answer. So I was really inspired by that video that we just watched, where he said, you know, sometimes failures, sometimes not knowing is actually a strength. And I think that in today's age, people have kind of been educated out of being open to the possibility of being wrong, and to find the power and latch onto that, because sometimes when you don't know, your mind is much more open to other possibilities that you never even knew existed. And so, long story short, about 5 days before my applications were due, I withdrew all of them. I called my dad and I said, I'm actually not going to go to medical school. And he said, are you having a mental breakdown? And I said, possibly, I don't know, but we're going to see. And I sold all my things and I went on this 4-year trip around the world. And what that did was, it allowed me to unlock the opportunities of my own life. And to find something that I really am passionate about. But it would never have happened if I wasn't able to say, you know what, this wasn't the right answer, and that's okay, that's actually exciting. So I have another question for you. What do you think this is? Anyone? Just yell it out. Art? Anyone else? Paper? What if it isn't anything? Right? It's so interesting to think about how something like this, which it could be art, it could be paper, it could be a card, it could be doodles, it could be wallpaper, it could be anything, right? And I think that that's the fundamental concept of creativity is exactly that somebody looked at something and thought, it's this. It's based off of your conversations, your experiences, the things that you're passionate about. And that's kind of what creativity is, and that's why it's so elusive. It's because what I think this is completely different than what you think it is or what you think it is, and that's really powerful. So this has kind of led me to try and think about what creativity is in a very simplistic sort of framework. And what I've come up with is this idea of creative dynamism, creative reactivity, and creative evolution. And what I'm thinking about here is it starts out with this dynamic environment, right? The world is always changing, especially today's age. You never end up at the same place where you started. And I think that's really important because if you're focused on trying to find the right solution to a problem, by the time you get to the end, the problem could be completely different. And that's what I mean about creativity, creative reactivity, is the sense that in this moving environment, in this world that's always changing and challenging, you have to be able to react and adapt as you move along the creative process, because that's what creativity actually means. And that kind of goes back to what elusivity is as well. And at the very end, and one of the things that I see as a challenge is that a lot of the time, people get stuck between this phase 2 and phase 3. So you get into a reactive mode where you think, oh my gosh, I see a problem, I'm trying to be creative, I'm going to react right now to this point in time, instead of saying, I'm going to continually adapt, continually react until I get to whatever that solution might be. And chances are it's going to be completely different. And that's what I mean by creative evolution. So a small antidote again. I used to work at a digital agency in Korea, and we serviced one of the largest telephone brands in the world. And we had a project where we were creating a commercial for this brand. And we showed up on the set in the morning, and our client said to us, how much money can we get back if we just cancel this entire shoot? And we said, excuse me? We can get the taxi fare back for the actors because they haven't arrived yet, but I mean, that's about it. And they said, okay, well, then we need to rewrite the script on the spot. And we thought to ourselves, how are we going to do this? How are we going to solve this problem? So of course we were panicked, and we called our creative director, and this was the answer that he said. He responded, and we thought, oh, a solution to the problem. How wonderful. This is what he sent us. And he said, the next 24 hours. And we said, well, this is going to be really fun. And so the whole point of this is that, I'm just going to leave it on repeat a little bit because I think it's so funny. But the point is that sometimes you're put in situations that you have to react to, and you have to be adaptable, and you have to be able to find a solution, and that's what creativity is. And so I want to leave you with kind of 3 things that I think are really important. The first is to be aware. So be aware of yourself, be aware of your environment, and don't be afraid to take chances, and don't be afraid to be wrong, because that's one of the most powerful things that you can be, is learning from the mistakes that you make in the world. And that kind of leads into this idea of being confident, right? Don't be afraid. Be excited and be fearless. Go into every situation in your life, in your job, in your studies, with positivity and open-mindedness and the excitement of knowing that there are endless possibilities in this world that we call creativity. And kind of as a last point, find creativity in anything. And so I want to leave you with this quote, actually from one of my favorite TED Talks by a man named Sir Ken Robinson, called Do Schools Kill Creativity? It's a brilliant talk, and I recommend everybody watch it. But he says, I don't mean to say that being wrong is the same thing as being creative, but what we do know is that if you're not prepared to be wrong, you will never come up with anything original. And I think that's such a powerful statement that we don't think about these days. And so I'd like to leave you with the power of being open-minded to the unknown opportunities that are in front of you, and to embrace the idea of being wrong as something really positive. Thank you very much.
Thank you.